Hi. It's Jill Davis again, and this is California for God and Country, along with the movement for California for Jesus. God and Country means that we are seeking to proclaim through the church media, through media, the church, through government, through culture, through art, to keep our national traditions in California instead of it turning into, a Marxist big government state. So there are three American foundations which America is built upon. The first one being God, nature's laws, and the law of nature. And the ruling party today of California that's been in power for over 20 years does not really ascend to that. So then after the idea of the Creator God, we have, because of that, American ideas that our rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness come from God and not government. And yet today's Democrat Party they believe that rights come from the government. And they have all sorts of different rights, like right to health care, but not inalienable rights that were given to us by God. And then, of course, that the founders said that government is instituted to secure these God-given rights. They do not give us those rights. And, it's interesting, we can just define a little bit what the word right means. Well, when you look it up, it means what's straight, what's true, what's a fact. So when people say, I have a right to do this, it isn't straight, it isn't a fact. And then I'd like to read where we get this, and this is our mission statement as a country. And it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident. That means that we believe that there is truth. Today, a lot of people in our culture, especially the Democrat Party, does not believe in an absolute truth, but our founders did. That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, that's nature's laws and the laws of nature, with certain inalienable rights. These are given to us, and that is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power by the consent of the governed to secure these rights. So when you think about what the pursuit of happiness, I think people get confused with that. And when you look up what really happiness means, it's an old philosophical idea of, well, what is the good? Where is the meaning in life? What is the absolute good? And how can we enjoy that? And in America, those ideas were thought to be about your property. Can you own something? Can you own your own land? And also, this would be the enjoyment of the good. And it also was about free markets, and that these were given by us. They were given to us by God for divine protection. And so if you had your own land, you had God's right to defend your land, because that's of God, that you can defend your own life. And so our founders had the idea that your castle, your home was your castle. So a lot of these ideas that our California government has right now, their party platform, they've been in power now for 50, 60 years. And since they've been in power, our education level has gone from 100% of as being in the 100 percentile down to being even less than 4 or 5%. Our poverty level has risen way up to almost 30% versus what it was 20, 30 years ago, 16%. Incarceration rates have gone way up. It says... and the dropout rates in the schools. In 1969, it was just like 4%, and now it's way up to almost 30% that drop out before they graduate from high school. This is the Democrat idea. And if we want California to be a golden state, You have to go Republican, because if you go Democrat, you do a brownout state. And let's find the truth about that. What do the party platforms believe? Well, the Democrats, they never talk about the Bible in their platform. Though I'm going to say all the things that the Republicans talk about that the Democrats don't. They don't talk about anything divine, creator, prayer, praise, morality, preaching, religious liberty, traditional family, inalienable rights, traditional marriage, sanctity of human life, traditional religious beliefs, Judeo-Christian heritage, Declaration of Independence. You know what I mean? What can you do with this kind of stuff? And then it doesn't even recognize the Declaration of Independence. And there's a bunch of other things in here. Oh, yeah, like one mentions, in the Republican platform, it mentions Christian 8 times, and it mentions Muslim 1 time. But in the Democrat platform, it mentions Christian 1 time and Muslim 8 times. Help us, Lord. Just these different things like this. It doesn't talk about the Bill of Rights. The Democrats believe that these are not, from God. The idea of religious liberty, that the government can't tell you how to do your belief system or to these kinds of things. So rights of conscience, it doesn't talk about. Prayer in school, they don't believe in. It doesn't allow, the Republicans quote George Washington, religion and morality are indispensable supports to a free society. It doesn't talk about it. Instead, it only says the only inalienable right the Democrats believe in is the right to vote. Ouch. Because they control the political machine, and even a lot of the voting has seemed to be corrupt because of, do you remember COVID, how horrible that was? And so this show is talking about the roots of one of the reasons why California is like it is. It started out different than the East Coast with the Reformation and the Pilgrims. This California started out with, in the 1500s, before even these ideas were talked about, individual liberty. They didn't come about till the 1600s with the Geneva Bible. So when California was first established, they didn't have that. They didn't believe that individuals were equal. And that's one of the reasons the missions didn't do as well. So I feel like why I sing this particular song at the beginning called Sing California is to talk about those Spanish roots, and the words come from Isaiah 40, where he says he's preparing. He says, the voice of one crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight, so that every valley shall be exalted and every mountain shall be brought low. So this is called the prepare ye the highway of the Lord. And then also in the song has the lyric about lift up your heads, O ye gates. Who is this King of glory? Have the King of glory come in. Who is this King of glory? Well, it's of course Jesus. California for Jesus. So we want to bring about our national traditions for California that was built not upon those Bill of Rights, but it was built upon an earlier idea of just conquest. So remember this song? It says, sing California, sing hallelujah, sing to Yeshua, 'cause the devil can't rule you on the King's highway. No, the devil can't fool you on the King's highway. El Camino Real, it's a brand new day. Todo es posible on the King's highway. El Camino del Rey. King of glory, strong and mighty, come in, come in, come into California. King of glory, strong and mighty, come in, come in, come into California. Oh, California, you're weak and shaky. Come in to Garden Country, California, for Jesus. One nation under God. California for Jesus. So we just believe that there's a new cusp happening in California. There's a turnaround. And that all the dear Spanish people that are here, the Mexicans that got their liberty from Spain because of Hidalgo, because he wanted equal rights, because he was an enlightened thinker, they are going to come and, like they did, vote for Trump more, vote for small government, and vote for Judeo-Christian ethic and work for it in our culture, not just stay aside and go, oh, I have nothing to do with politics. So we need, as Americans, to be in culture and the church and the media and government, and that's what this show is about. So the idea of providence is God's wonderful influence in what he does with us when we are trying to do his will. And it's a real interesting thing that when this area was owned by Spain, called New Spain, because Cortez, the great explorer who destroyed the Aztec culture, and then saw our land here and called it California after Calafia. And just that name means a lot because it says that a pagan Islamic person who doesn't even, a woman who doesn't eschews men, finds the Lord and lives happily ever after. So that's what Calafia means. When we say California, we're talking about salvation. I myself got saved here in 1981. So we wanted to do that song about Calafia. You know, it was all about Spain and how they fought the Muslims. And so there was a lot of poetry about freedom and Christian ideas. But they didn't have the Bill of Rights. That's my point. That came later. But at least our name alludes to God and salvation because of Cortez. So I wrote this little song about Calafia. It says, have you heard the old Spanish story about California's Calafia? Well, she was against God and men. She was an Amazon warrior woman, but she was so beautiful. Yes, she was so powerful that she went to Constantinople with a Muslim man to fight the Christian paladin. But when she saw that resplendent knight, she knew in her heart he was more virtuous, true, and right. But in the vainness of her imagination, she said, I'll fight that night, I'll show my might. Well, the night took her captive and rescued her from herself. Oh, but you know, in the end, she gave her life to the Lord and vowed holy matrimony to the knight's nephew, and lived happily ever after. So remember this old Spanish story about California's Califia. Well, it's a legend that Cortez knew of God and glory, of knights and chivalry. Oh, he loved epic poetry, and so he named our land California after Califia's clan. They were against God and even men. They were Amazon warrior women. But many in their pride to show their might found the light of Jesus Christ and lived happily ever after. So when you think of California, it implies that lost lives are found in Jesus Christ. When you think of California, you realize that your life is found in Jesus Christ. Just like mine. Well, this has been the story how California got its name. So isn't it wonderful that these narratives that try to speak about things that aren't true, the true story of our state was that Cortez named it after a famous legend of a pagan prone to Islam, prone to lesbian, what? And that she found the Lord and vowed holy matrimony and lived happily ever after. So this is what we want about California. As we proclaim these truths over our state, we want to say, redemption. You look at Los Angeles. They are angels. And we proclaim Los Angeles will be the messengers of God. And San Francisco, we proclaim that San Francisco will be a deliverance from men in bonds. And we proclaim that Sacramento will be the capital that makes righteous laws. Let's agree with that. Let's agree. And then you can see that because California was built upon a pre-Bill of Rights or pre-enlightened or pre-understanding of that our Creator has given us inalienable rights that was never codified under Spain. It was only codified under the United States Constitution. The state, California, finally came in to statehood in 1850 after providentially finding gold and the Bear Flag Revolution. And we became a state, the 31st state of America. And the point of this show is to help California by proclamation, by speaking the truth about its roots, to come into the fullness of the Bill of Rights, the right to bear arms, the right to free speech. Because we don't want to go back to that COVID, do we? Do you remember that? How the churches were shut down? Well, one of the things I have found that will stop this communistic color revolution, because that's what it is, it's using ideas and culture and lies to change a society, to degrade national traditions. Well, I have found that the way we can keep our country free is for us, especially that know the Lord, to not only pray, but that we would have faith across California. We would take care of our families. We would agree that marriage is between a man and a woman and have lots of kids. So faith, family, and friends. And through that, you get this providential DNA or yeast upon California that will change it. Just like the Marxist ideas have changed California and turned our schools that used to be 100% first in the nation to being some of the lowliest. We have some of the poorest educated. People try to send their kids to private schools because many of our schools are not, they don't know how to read and write when they graduate, many of these kids. So I wanted to talk about a great Californian American story about our ancient history, just like we were talking about Spain. And it was a very famous tune that was so beautiful. It was called the Londonderry Air. And people loved it all over the world. And the fun little part is that it was probably made by an Irish man in Northern Ireland when a town was called Londonderry because the English were trying to take over, or they did, Northern England. And so the Irish, out of his heart, wrote this beautiful tune on his harp and called it, on his penny whistle or what, called it the Londonderry Air. Well, Derry is Irish for oak grove. And no one wrote any lyrics to it until about 1910 because the town was called Londonderry in the 1600s. So all the way up to the 1900s, there hasn't been any good lyric to it. But an English lawyer put some lyrics to it called Danny Boy. And the reason why he knew to do that was that his brother, his name was Frederick Weatherly, and his brother Edward had an Irish wife, and they were living in America. And that little girl, her name was Margaret or Jessie, and her daddy was Irish and worked on the California Railroad. And she remembered hearing him play the Londonderry Air. And she got a hold of her brother-in-law and said, you know, you ought to put your lyrics to that beautiful air. And so here California was used providentially to bring about Danny Boy. Now, I'm not finished with the story. What's so interesting is that the story Danny Boy is kind of about death and love and all that. But God had it redeemed. There was a dear Christian man named Jimmy Davis, who was the governor of Louisiana, who you might know in that he wrote the famous song, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are blue. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Well, that man who wrote that song, he knew a lady Christian named Dottie Rambo, and he suggested to her, would you write some redeeming lyrics to Danny Boy? And she was going to visit her friend in the hospital who had cancer. And she got these lyrics, and he came to know the Lord through these lyrics. So I'm going to play the song. Amazing grace shall always be my song of praise, for it was grace that bought my liberty. I do not know just why he came to love me so. He looked beyond my fault and saw my need. I shall forever lift mine eyes to Calvary, to view the cross where Jesus died for me. How marvelous that grace that caught my falling soul. He looked beyond my fault and saw my need. And you know, they talked about Danny Boy. It says the pipes are playing. And it went like this.